Hi, I'm Steve Kep, co-founder of From Day One, our forum on corporate values. Welcome to today's webinar. We're excited about this topic, which is about looking at how best to support families and starting families, employees and starting families. Before we get started, I want to share something special we have for today's attendees. One of our monthly virtual conferences is coming up on Wednesday, December 15th, and it's titled The Future of Work in an Era of Rapid Change. We've got speakers lined up from all parts of the economy, from Slack to General Motors. These conversations will be particularly valuable for employers who are charting the continued transformation of work and looking to get ahead of the curve. Thanks to our partners, including today's sponsor, we have some complimentary VIP tickets available for those who've joined today's webinar. I'm putting a link in the chat space right now. I think we want to check this one out because the regular price for our conference tickets is $149, and this link will give you a free VIP ticket for the whole day's activities. Now, today we'll be exploring the topic of supporting employees with family forming while managing costs. Here's what this is about. Companies want to support employees in starting families, yet the costs can be high and the choices can be complex when it comes to fertility treatments, adoption, egg freezing, and more. So how can employers offer individualized support for such deeply personal experiences, yet keep the costs at a sustainable level for the company? What can employers do to help guide workers on what can often be a long series of decisions from the idea of starting a family to fruition? Our sponsor today is Carrot. I'll tell you a little bit about them. Carrot Fertility is the leading global fertility benefits provider for employers, built to make fertility care and family forming accessible and affordable to anyone who wants or needs it, regardless of age, race, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, and geography. Now, a few quick logistical items before we start the conversation. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on demand soon after the event, so you can look out for an email in about 24 hours with the link. That email will also have info on how you can get professional development credits for this session from both the Society of Human Resource Management and the HR Certification Institute. And you can look out for a written account of the conversation on our website at fromday1.co. Now, for the audience, around 45 minutes into the webinar, we'll have a Q&A session. You can submit your questions anytime they occur to you using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Now I'd like to introduce our moderator for today's session, journalist and editorial leader Siobhan O'Connor. Currently consulting on strategy for Unfinished, an organization working to strengthen civic life in the digital age. Siobhan was most recently vice president of editorial at Medium, the tech media company, where she oversaw all original content operations. Before that, she was executive editor at Time and co-chair of Fortune magazine's Health Conference, also executive editor at Prevention and features editor at Good. Siobhan, it's great to have you here. Take it away.
Thanks so much, Steve, and thank you all for joining us today. This is such a rich topic, and happy to be moderating what will, I think, be a very interesting conversation with experts coming at this topic from all angles. To set the table, this is a conversation that would have been unthinkable in earlier generations, not only because we've seen massive advancements in fertility tech, but also because we're beginning to see the destigmatization of the topic, and norms are changing faster than ever in the workplace. So we're going to get into it, but before we dive into the discussion, I'll ask that each of our esteemed panelists introduce themselves. Please share your name and briefly describe your role. We'll get more into the nitty-gritty of the work that you all do during the discussion. And Serena, let's kick off with you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm connecting here from London, UK. I'm here as a visiting faculty at London Business School, and I basically started doing research on infertility 2 years back, and I'm very happy to be here to talk about those research and our findings.
Great, Kathleen, you're next.
Everyone. My name is Kathleen Salings. I'm the Customer Success Vice President at Carrot Fertility. And really my focus is on establishing collaborative, cohesive, and successful strategies with employers as we launch Carrot into their benefit suite and ecosystem.
Thank you, Kathleen. Let's go to you, Rosanne.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rosanne Cuje. I work at MasterCard. I'm the head of Total Rewards for North America.
Excellent. Dr. Levine, Brian?
Good afternoon. I am Dr. Brian Levine. I am a practicing reproductive endocrinology and infertility specialist. I have the pleasure of working at CCRM New York, also known as the Colorado Center for Reproductive Medicine, where I serve as the founding partner and practice director.
And last but not least, Dani.
Thank you. So yes, Dani Fischer. I'm with Hewlett Packard Enterprise, and I am our Senior Director for America's Total Rewards.
Excellent. All right. Thanks, everyone. So let's get into this discussion. Serena, we're going to start with you. Last year, you co-authored a terrific piece in HBR Harvard Business Review that opened with an anecdote about a professional woman dealing with infertility treatment. She was quite understandably not comfortable talking to her boss at work about what she was going through. The appointments were very demanding. It took a toll on her health, her well-being, and also her career. She ended up not going for a better position in her department when it opened up because she was silently dealing with the time-consuming and frankly, emotionally excruciating treatment of infertility. She was having a hard time. So you argue in the piece with Nada Basir that it's time to normalize the conversation around fertility and fertility planning and infertility in the workplace. I'd like to hear from you. It's sort of a two-parter. So what's at stake for companies that don't do that? And what concrete things, aside from benefits, which we'll also talk about, can employers do to normalize discussions of and support of people on their fertility journey?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. So the woman in the opening of that article is me. So I went, this whole research was inspired by my 4-year infertility treatment journey. And it was, so I was an assistant professor at the time, and it was only toward the very end of my treatment that I was sitting at a cafe just writing. I used to write to kind of ease the emotional pain that I was going through, that it hit me that I'm someone dealing with a clinical illness. I have been going to the doctor's office frequently. I have to go for blood work, ultrasound constantly, and I wasn't able to take even a half day off because of that illness. And so that's basically the motivation behind this research, and I'm very happy with the response we have got to that article, and the fact that now people are talking about infertility, because it's unfortunately such a taboo subject in our communities. So when we come to I'm going to answer the second part first, and I'm going to talk more about the support in general. When it comes about normalizing the conversation, to a good extent, it comes down to the managers and leaders in organizations to be open about this concept and to be open about the experiences to the level that they feel comfortable, because we know that particularly like for women, they have a strong reservation with making their motherhood intentions known, because they're worried. We know we have like motherhood penalty is well documented in research now. We know that women as mothers, as pregnant women, they are receiving intangible or hard to quantify penalties because they have decided to have a more balanced life rather than dedicating themselves to corporate world. So I'm putting that in like as a qualifier, because we are not just to make sure that we are not putting any women under pressure to be open about their infertility. But if we know that from the women that we have spoken to, they if they know someone has gone through fertility treatment, it's way easier for them to reach for help and reach for support. And definitely when the organization leaders are outspoken about taboo subjects such as mental health, we know that other employees start feeling comfortable about talking about their issues. And but how else can organizations support women who are going through fertility treatment? In many ways. First and foremost is basically stopping to penalize women for wanting to be mothers, because that starts sending the message that now it's okay to talk about my plans for having a family. And the big challenge with fertility treatments is that it's very uncertain. Many women start their family planning when they are in a proper position, like they're in a stable position at work, and they feel that, well, this is the right time that I'm going to have a family. And we all know that our biological clocks are ticking and they're not definitely aligned with our career clocks. But then things, and many of these women think, okay, I have a house, I have a decent job, I can afford to go to get pregnant and be on mat leave for the next year and a half without moving anywhere else or applying for any promotions. And when they realize that they are infertile, this journey can last for months and years. And that uncertainty element is the piece that the managers should recognize when someone comes forward with the information that they are planning to have a family and they are going through fertility treatment. And it's important that they are not excluded from promotion and opportunities, and that the idiosyncrasies of each situation is taken into account before any decisions are made. I have a long list of recommendations, but I'm very aware of other speakers. But and there was a second point about what is that? What do organizations have to lose? A lot. We know that there are more and more women who are looking for organizations who have fertility treatment plans. So certainly it's becoming an important decision-making factor for many women. Many of them are asking their employers, what are your plans, whether it comes to egg freezing or other forms of support. And this is the research that we are doing. Our focus is to understand why aren't women where they deserve to be? Why do we see the number of women in higher managerial positions plateauing for so many years? And there are these subtle differences and subtle challenges that women are facing that are holding them back. And that's the purpose of this research. And definitely we see women making very difficult career choices when they reach to this point, and they have to make very difficult sacrifices, which would cost organizations with their inclusion and diversity initiatives.
Thank you very much. And that's actually a perfect setup for our next question, which is for Rosanne. Let's go to you. You know, today the best, most modern and competitive workplaces are finding ways to support their employees' whole lives, including their path to forming a family. At the same time, and it's early days, obviously, in this trend, and I know that you have a lot of experience here, so we want to hear from you on this. This is also one of the most deeply personal, as Steve said at the outset, deeply personal things a person will go through in their life, and each person's experience and set of choices are so unique to them. So I'd love to hear about how you and MasterCard how you can support workers at scale while managing costs when every person is so unique.
Yeah. So I think, managing costs is always, part of the role of HR professionals, total reward professionals. But I think what we like to do at MasterCard is first really understand what it is our employees need and want. You need to understand your employee base. You need to understand sort of the demographics, the generational needs, things like that, and start thinking about how can you design flexible, simple, easy to use, easy to understand. If someone doesn't know how to access the benefit, they don't know what the benefit means, they're not going to use them, right? They're not going to know what you have to offer. So I like to start, doing that, looking at, what do we need to support our employees? Once you figure that out, then you have to think about, okay, well, this is not a one size fits all approach, right? If you talk about DE&I, whether it's women's fertility or whether it's same sex couples or individuals who don't have a partner who are looking to build families, right? Family is not, the traditional family that, companies, thought about, many years ago. We need to think about, how can we support everyone no matter what their family looks like and how they want to grow it. So you have to think about providing that flexibility and choice with them when you're thinking about the design. From a cost management standpoint, I think having Carrot here is actually very good. There's different ways that you can introduce fertility benefits, right? You can do something through the medical plan, or you can do sort of a carve out approach where you partner with someone with Carrot and that has sort of that suite of services that can actually help you to manage your costs. But if you're running it through the medical plan, there's pros and cons to that. And you have to think about, what you're going to do to support all employees as part of that. So you can do cost share when you're thinking about, designing these plans. So how much of the cost do you want to put on the employee versus on the company? And find the right plan design is what I like to think. Figure out what the plan design is going to be, how simplistic you can make it. Then you can figure out how to manage the cost from that point. If you need to start scaling back a little bit, if you need to, tweak the design a little bit to make it more affordable for, both the employees and for the company. There's lots of different ways that you can go about it, but I think finding the right plan design is where you really need to start, and then figure out how to manage your costs from there.
Thank you. So Kathleen, let's move over to you. I know Carrot, which is a family planning benefit solution, is at the vanguard of inclusivity when it comes to options you provide. So in addition to fertility treatments and egg freezing, are adoption and surrogacy now on the suite of coverage options? And peering around the corner, what are you seeing in the market in terms of trends, and what do you think will be accelerating in the near future?
Well, great questions. The first question, around what the breadth of services and journeys that we support, and if that, includes beyond IVF and egg freezing, includes adoption and surrogacy, and the answer is absolutely yes, it does. I think one of the things that we can all agree on is that the way we are forming families has changed over time. With science, looking at cultural shifts and changes, even employer-led progress that we've seen over the past 10 years, bringing fertility health to the forefront of healthcare, it's become a really critical need and not just a nice to have. So as we think about that, and we think about, the breadth and services that we offer from a Carrot perspective, it's important to remember that it's way more than just IVF. IVF is only one piece of the puzzle. So as we think about, and as we, you heard Rosanne say, looking for flexibility, looking for choice. Employees go down so many different paths when they're looking at their family forming journey, giving them options that really are tailored and personalized to them and where they are in their journey are super important. It has to resonate with that individual. And so thinking about, Carrot and what we do and how we support individuals, it really is that inclusive nature. That's the foundation and the core of who we are, ensuring that there's a path to parenthood that fits the need for all. And, really being aware of that. We didn't just build a model around opposite sex couples pursuing IVF. It's a great start, but we've advanced beyond that. And, we're looking at our plan designs to ensure that they are inclusive. They're, relevant to all paths to parenthood, meaning, we cover adoption for same-sex couples the same way that we are going to cover adoption for those that are intending single parents. It's really, ensuring that the needs are there and supporting in a way that, we're not limiting coverage based on age, gender, identity, or even the Planned Parenthood pursuit that an individual is on. Did you all know that only 1 in 5 companies that offer fertility coverage today also provide coverage for adoption and foster care? That's a recent stat that came from Fertility IQ. So as you think about how the landscape is shifting, and where the need is, ensuring that the program and the platform and who you're partnering with is able to be fully inclusive. So it's not just the focus on the infertility side of the diagnosis. It really is a path to parenthood that allows that flexibility for all. One of the other things that, you mentioned was, around the cost share and the piece of it. And I think, Rosanne, you hit on it really closely. It's really identifying what the employee needs are, and that's going to vary by employer. It's going to vary by the footprint of the employer. Are you in the US? Are you a global footprint? Understanding the needs from a cultural perspective, understanding the needs from a legal perspective, really, providing that easy to use navigation, but also offering that flexibility and choice to that employee as they're pursuing that path to parenthood. One last thing that I will end with before I, pass it back over to you, Siobhan, is, the whole component of thinking about, DE&I, and I know, Rosanne, you touched on this. Again, that means different things to different individuals. It's really important to have that inclusivity approach to the idea behind fertility benefits and family forming journeys.
Thank you. We're going to go over to Brian. Now, Brian, another two-parter. You've been a pioneer in infertility treatment for decades now. I'd also love to hear from you about what you see as the most promising developments in fertility treatment, what's new, what's coming around the corner, and also to build on what Kathleen was just talking about, and Rosanne to an extent as well. I know something that you're really passionate about is how policies can be sort of accidentally like exclusionary, right? And it's something that you've talked about and thought about. So you can start with that if you want to just build on what Kathleen was saying, or take it in whatever order you like.
Well, thank you. That's dangerous always because I can talk for quite a bit. I promise I will not drone on. Look, this is the tip of the iceberg, right? You know, what we're all kind of dancing around and talking about is the fact that people have been talking about fertility at the water cooler in whispers. People have been hiding their bruises, hiding their bloat. People have been concealing their miscarriages. And they've also been scared to say that I'm hurting because no one knows what to do. No one knows what to say, right? Like we have this bizarre culture in America, and it's not just corporate America, it's actually all of America, where we tell people, oh, it's too early to tell someone that you're pregnant. Well, if you've ever wondered why we say that, is that we tell people, you know, don't share with your friends and family until you're through the first trimester, because most miscarriages happen in the first trimester, right? So without even realizing, we're almost protecting people from having the unfortunate conversation, because many of us ourselves are uncomfortable having the conversation about loss. Now, if you want to look at this in the context of an employer status, well, thank God we finally have the conversations happening about healing from a miscarriage. Thank God we have people who are brave enough to say, like, I too have had a miscarriage, right? 1/3 of all pregnancies end in miscarriage. Most people don't even know how many pregnancies their own mothers have had, right? I mean, you only kind of know about your siblings or yourself. But we're changing that dialogue and we're flipping that script to finally say, look, not every pregnancy is a win, and not every pregnancy has the outcome that we hoped and desired, but every pregnancy is a pregnancy, and that takes a toll on my body, my relationship, and my family. As we're sitting here together, having this conversation, if you were to ask me, what do I think is the greatest technological innovation in reproductive medicine in 2021, is the same answer I would have given you in 2020, or in 2019, or in 2018. And that technological advancement is the fact that we finally have employers who are talking about the fact that fertility is not just an add-on service. It's not just a comma. It's not just a retainment tool. It is an important part of how you treat holistically your employees and allow for longevity to occur. You know, I have 2 little girls at home, and right now we're in the process of applying to kindergarten, so looking at schools. And you know, as we're on this interview trail, I say to my wife all the time, we're looking at the 13-year journey, right? Like we're looking at where she's going to go from kindergarten till when she graduates high school. Well, if I'm an employer, I want to be looking at my employee for longevity. What is their 13-year journey? Where did they hope to go with us as a company? So in another world, besides being just a fertility doctor, I also have the opportunity to work with a company called Maven, which also works in employee benefits like Carrot, where I'm one of their medical directors. And we have this conversation all the time. Like, fertility is an experience to be supported. It's not an expense to be managed. And I think that's like how we're flipping the script, right? Like, stop managing the expenses of fertility, because there's really 3 pain points. There's the physical cost of going through fertility treatments. There's the emotional cost of going through fertility treatments. And then there's the finances. And yes, the finances can be the straw that breaks the camel's back. It can be the real one that breaks it. And, you know, I think before we just heard a great vignette of, do I stay at work, or do I finally just leave my job because the money I'm making doesn't even cover the cost of the treatment? But if you can start to figure out of how you have these dialogues and how you can say, like, we have a supportive network, we're supporting our employees, we're coming together with a unified goal, then all of a sudden I think employees have do 2 things. One is they're honest, right? Like, instead of saying, like, I hope my retrieval's on a Saturday so I don't miss work, they could just go to their employer and say, I'm having a real hard time even just getting out of the blocks and starting a family. And maybe someone else will say, me too. Or second is, maybe you can remove that one aspect of the pain of the treatment, that financial pain, to finally say, like, we as an employer support you on your journey, and we look forward to having you for as long as possible, and even as your family starts and as your family continues on.
Yeah.
So that's like number two wrapped into number one. But to answer the first question is, what do I think is the coolest or the best technology that's on the brink? I think it's the fact that we've flipped the script on IVF pregnancies being high-risk pregnancies. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is that in my role as a fertility doctor, but also as someone who kind of sits at the leadership level of a clinic, I frequently hear people say, well, if I give benefits to my employees, they're all going to be high risk because they're all going to jump to IVF. Well, the truth is no one signs up to do, 60 to 120 injections in 2 weeks, right? So big picture, no one's going to run at this, saying like, oh, let me do this. But instead, what you might find is that people will start doing fertility treatments and seeking treatment earlier, which will afford them hopefully low risk, healthy pregnancies. And a low risk, healthy pregnancy, meaning one single pregnancy at a time, right? Limiting the twins, limiting the triplets, doing the proper workup, maybe stopping the clock, right? Freezing eggs, freezing embryos, having the ability to allow a proper workup to occur, or for someone to maybe say, let me make embryos today and maybe lose weight, control my blood pressure, control my blood sugars, get my diabetes under control before I get pregnant. Well, that affords people the ability to be not only better mothers, but to be better employees as well. High-risk pregnancy.
It's truly a form of planning, what you're describing. It's like really
Correct.
Embracing it, not a last resort.
Correct.
Dani, let's go to, welcome back, Dani. Sorry, we lost you for a second there. We're glad you're back. You've held multiple roles at Hewlett Packard Enterprise, many of them focused on making HP as inclusive as possible. I'd love to hear about the changes you've made with regards to fertility and parental leave benefits and what prompted them. Like, was it the employee base? Was it your conscience? Was it the market? Just talk us through that journey for you.
Certainly. And honestly, I have to say, it's probably a little bit of all of the above, right? That really kind of push the envelope there. But we do want to be family friendly, and whatever definition of family that is for folks. So part of the journey did start in 2019 when we expanded our parental leave. So all employees have access to 6 months of paid leave globally. When they have a baby, adopt a baby, whatever the case may be, or a child, they get that time for bonding. And then on the heels of that, we've had robust infertility benefits. And then in early 2020, we decided that's not inclusive enough. Not everyone that wants to have a child is actually experiencing infertility. There could be other situations. So we expanded that definition to be fertility so that there didn't have to be a diagnosis of trouble necessarily. And then along with that, we also added the egg freezing as well, so because we're trying to attract, obviously, early career folks. We would love to increase our representation of women in the workforce, allow them to put that planning off if they need to, and support them in that journey. And then this year we partnered with Included Health for our LGBTQ population as well, to really help them navigate those benefits, because ours is currently through the medical plan. And as Rosanne said, that brings its own challenges. And we did an audit and found that all the wonderful changes we wanted weren't necessarily implemented exactly as we had hoped. And so, we've got that cleaned up, but now we also have that extra support to really guide employees through the process. And then in January, we're rolling out Included Health, which it was Grand Rounds. Now it's all encompassing organization to all employees to really help them navigate whatever healthcare journey they may be on, but, to also assist on the fertility journey as well.
Thank you. Building on that, Rosanne, I'd love to hear from you. I know you mentioned that you've also extended benefits to same-sex couples and individuals. Let's hear about your experience adding these benefits. What prompted the changes, and how have they been received?
Sure. So we have business resource groups at MasterCard. So I typically will tap into those groups. We call them our BRGs. We have Women's Leadership Network. We have a Pride group. YoPros, a whole variety of them. So they typically meet, I guess, about once a month, and I'll join, twice a year, 3 or 4 times a year, depending on what the topics are that they want to talk about, and really, kind of pick their brain as to, what is working, what's not working, and go from there. And I'd say when I started this role about 2 years ago, one of the first groups I met with was the Pride BRG. And they said, we really need fertility benefits. And I said, what are you talking about? We have fertility benefits. And they're like, no, we don't, not for us. So I, looked into it a little bit more, and similar to Dani, I found that, well, we don't have fertility benefits, we have infertility benefits. You need a medical diagnosis of infertility. And for the majority of same-sex couples, or even, we've had women who are just not in a relationship who want to start a family. They don't meet the criteria of infertility definition. So their claims were being denied, and they were, paying out of pocket. So that's one of the first things that we said, okay, well, we need to kind of flip this here, and we need to switch to fertility benefits and make sure it's inclusive for all employees. We also, had a clause that for egg freezing, you could only be covered for egg freezing if you had a cancer diagnosis and the treatments were going to potentially, harm your future reproductive state. So, strip some of those things out, took limits away as to, how many eggs you can freeze at a certain time and things like that. Because there was, another kind of weird clause in there that, if you had more than 2 eggs, you weren't allowed to freeze anymore until you use those 2 eggs, like things like that, are kind of really buried and hidden in these very long documents, tons of pages. And I, kind of sat down with my team and with our medical vendor and said, okay, we need to kind of change this around. And what I want us to do every year is pick different areas where we really do a deep dive into what is the plan covering, what are these exclusions, and how are we going to flip the script and make it just more flexible, more user-friendly for the employees, and give employees the benefit. Like, our intention is not to not provide the benefits. We want to provide the benefits and help people grow a family however they need to. So I'd say that that's some of the things that we do. We also recently rolled out in 2020 a global surrogacy and adoption program. Prior to that, we only had adoption coverage in the US, and it was minimal. It was about $5,000 a year. Anyone who's adopted a child knows $5,000 isn't getting them very far at all, but it was something. And we, again, wanted to make sure that it was inclusive, and we wanted it to be global, not just in the US. So we have coverage for surrogacy and adoption across the globe, making sure, obviously, we have to stay within legal limits. There are still certain countries, believe it or not, where surrogacy is considered illegal and things like that. So, spent a lot of time working with our legal counterparts, understanding what we can and cannot legally do to roll that out. And we've also increased our new parent leave as well. Again, it's gender neutral. Everyone gets the same benefits, so 16 weeks full pay to bond with the child, and that is the global minimum. Many countries, offer much more than that. The US is pretty far behind the new parent leave and bonding with the child, but that's the minimum global standard that we provide.
That's great. I want to talk about mental health and fertility treatment.
Yeah.
It's something Serena's written about. It's been very well documented in the medical literature that this journey to family forming can take a significant toll on individuals and couples. So maybe Kathleen, we'll start with you, but I think I have a feeling all of our panelists will have thoughts on this. What are some of the opportunities to support employees, not just on the financial costs, but also the psychological ones?
No, it's a great question, and I think it's one when this topic comes up that can't be avoided. As an individual is going through their journey from choosing their path to parenthood, so many things come into play. You've got the financial support and the concerns there, but there's also the emotional side, that really you tend to not necessarily think about. But no matter what journey people are on, they're really interested in looking for that level of mental health support, both emotionally and physically. So we just recently did a survey, and what we found is that 89% of our survey respondents said that fertility and family forming has had a negative impact on their mental health. Think about that. The stress that comes with going through that family forming, really deciding what that's going to look like as a whole. 59% also shared that, the subsequent impact on that really was their work performance, meaning that they were so stressed about what they were going to do in their next step in family forming that it was impacting their productivity. We also know, and I think this ties back, Serena, to your earlier conversations, half of women and 15% of men have said that simply dealing with infertility has been the most upsetting experience of their lives. So, at Carrot, we find it's critical that the support not only be about the financial aspect or helping educate individuals or providing peace of mind around, single embryo transfers. All of those things are critical and important, but equally important, and if not more important, is that component of emotional support and well-being and being there to provide that level of coverage and encouragement as an individual is pursuing that path to parenthood. The other thing that comes along with that, and I think, Rosanne, you hit on it, are the legal aspects. Thinking about how stressful it is to know what's legal, what's not legal, what do I need to do to actually close this adoption? These are real things that come up and people are facing that need to be able to have a mechanism or a support tactic to turn to. And we are very excited that is part of what we offer from a Carrot perspective, is that individualized, tailored approach to mental health support as it ties back to an individual's personal path to parenthood.
Thank you. Serena, would you like to add anything on this topic? Oh, you're muted.
Definitely. So I, as Kathleen said, it's there is so much happening when women are going through infertility, and we see signs of resource depletion, very close to burnout for many of them happening, because you are this you have had a stable life, and all of a sudden you have this external source of constant worry and physical pressure, as Brian said, and emotional challenges. And the topic of relationships, research shows that the couples who go through fertility treatments are 3 times more likely to end their cohabitation or marriage than regular couples. So it's immense impact on a woman, her partner, and what organizations can do is to create space for flexibility, for getting support at work, for modifying work when needed. Interestingly, we find that for women who are going through fertility treatment, COVID became a blessing. Many of them told us that, I don't know how I could have gone through this if it wasn't for COVID, because managing the appointments is a big challenge when you are in a job and in a role where you have visibility. Any time that you take off, people kind of start noticing. This was this amazing woman who shared with us that every time, by the time I got to work, it was 10 a.m. and I had to get to my desk, and it truly felt like the walk of shame. So that pressure for women who have to work from the office and are in a very kind of a state of hypervisibility, it becomes an additional stress. And so by offering opportunities for them to have flexibility around their scheduling and not necessarily making this as making sure that you have systems in place that don't make this look like a favor from a manager to an employee. This is an important part of life for a growing number of women, and it's important that organizations are supporting that. And it is important that human resource departments offer training for managers, because the taboo around infertility has made it like a black box. No one knows what happens to a woman when she goes through infertility. And as a result, the managers don't know what to expect. They really don't understand what is happening to my star employee and why is she all of a sudden feeling like struggling with making the appointments, delivering projects, and showing up for the meetings as she did. So that kind of training becomes very important to help women not to see the work as an important source of stress, and being able to get the fulfillment that they need from their work. Interestingly, many of the women that helped us with our research, they told us that they felt that work was an important source of fulfillment for them. And these were definitely the women who were in jobs that they felt that they're not under pressure. They don't have to constantly explain their absences, but that was actually a source of fulfillment and enjoyment for them as they were going through this honestly like horrible experience in their personal life. Mm-hmm. So work and managers can do a lot to support women and to basically protect them from getting to the point that now I have mental challenge. Now I'm facing severe depression and need to go get time off because of depression. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. And just so that the group knows, we've got about 4 more minutes till we go to Q&A. There's already some questions starting to come in, and they're great. So, but Dani, building on what Serena was just saying, I'd love to hear from you for the people ops, for people ops people. Sorry, that's for people in HR who are not yet either persuaded to bring these benefits to their workforce, or just haven't, like, what's your sort of pitch for why this is good for not only employees, but also for companies?
I mean, simply, I think it's just the right thing to do. You know, we cover so many different items, you know, in our medical plans. And to me, it's a basic right, you know, to have a child, grow a family. And regardless of the reasons that folks may not be able to conceive on their own, I mean, I feel as employers, you know, we expect so much out of our employees, and I think it is fair for them to have expectations on us on what we should provide, you know, and as an organization, you know, we have a whole program around work that fits your life. And so, you know, it's intended to help our employees with whatever journey they may be on. Most of our folks will continue to work somewhere outside the office. It doesn't have to be at home, but wherever they're most comfortable. We also have made that just very flexible. You know, it's not expected to be an 8 to 5 gig necessarily. So they can take time out of the business day to go to an appointment, and we may not be the wiser, you know, if they're taking care of their responsibilities and in close connection with their people leaders. You know, we are putting a lot of faith into our people leaders as well, but it's kind of a two-way street. But I really think that at the heart of it, you know, as employers, you know, I think we owe it to our employees to give them, you know, all the tools necessary, you know, to have as full of a life as possible.
Thanks, Dani. Brian, last question for you before we go to the Hive. I'd love for you to share what, this seems like something you're passionate about, what, if anything, could create an even greater paradigm shift when it comes to both stigma around fertility treatment, egg freezing, et cetera, and access to affordable care? Like, what would move the needle?
And in 2 minutes, right? So, so I think it's just understanding that fertility is not a finite thing, right? Like, this is not a 2-week experience. It's not just getting pregnant. It's not just getting eggs in the bank. I think understanding that families need to be supported end to end, from the moment that someone is preconception and thinking about either starting a family or protecting and preserving their fertility, straight through that pregnancy, and then in those really vulnerable months after delivering, when we know there are so many issues with mental health that are not adequately addressed today in our current healthcare system. So I would kind of just say it's an end-to-end assessment. And if there's something that we can all take away from here, is that realizing that our employees and our partners and our patients and our friends and colleagues all deserve to be, you know, respected in a way to understand that it's different for everyone. Just because you have a friend who went through this, just because someone else is going through it, doesn't mean that it's of the same magnitude and gravity to that person. And everyone has a unique journey, and hopefully everyone achieves their goal. But really understanding it's a continuum of healthcare.
That's such a great point, because I think people tend to understand that every pregnancy is different, but they don't understand necessarily that every miscarriage is different, that every egg freezing experience, oh, it was terrible for my friend, it might not be for you, et cetera, et cetera. So just that, I mean, I think there's a refrain today, it's treat the individual, not the diagnosis or the procedure. All right, we're going to go to some questions. Here's one probably for Rosanne and Dani, but others can weigh in. Let's start with you two. For the corporations offering fertility benefits to employees, what kind of training / education / support do you offer your HR professionals and people managers to teach them how to do the stuff that Serena was talking about, supporting them?
I can go first, and then Dani can chime in on what her experience is. So as far as training on how to deal with it, we have sessions with our, we call them our people business partners, and we talk to them about benefit changes each year, what we're doing differently, how they can help manage or support employees. To your earlier point about miscarriages, right, and how you deal with them. Well, I can tell you personally, when I had a miscarriage years ago, it was take vacation time, take sick time to deal with it, right? There is no sort of leave to help you manage that. And today, we have a bereavement leave, and, miscarriage is part of that bereavement leave.
Wow.
Because it is a loss of a child. So, we do, provide time off where we're not telling someone use your sick time or vacation time to deal with that, loss. And we remind our people business partners and our managers that these are all tools that they can use. We have a service center where most employees call in to the service center for questions. And we spend a lot of time training them on how to, help people and guide them through, their journey with whatever issues they're having, and make sure that the team that's answering the questions understands the benefits. And when they're talking to an employee, they say, oh, well, we also have this to support you because it sounds like you're having maybe a hard time on the mental health side of the house, or, this is taking a toll on your marriage. You should call our, EAP and help get some marriage counseling to help, get you through this, fertility process. So it's really about making sure that the front line who's answering the questions for the employees or seeing that something's off understands what you have to offer and knows where to point them in the right direction when they see that they need the help.
Thank you for that. Dani, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I would echo a lot of what Rosanne said. We do much of that as well. But also, like I said, we are partnering with Included Health going forward, and they're replacing all of the support that our carrier has provided in the past. So they will be the one-stop shop for employees. And honestly, our biggest response is going to be to get folks to Included Health. When something is churning, no matter mild to major, they're going to be that place that they start. And that's where they can triage the whole person, much like you guys were talking about, because it's never just one area that's off. Oftentimes there is a multitude of support needed. And our feeling is these are the folks that are actually capable. There's nurses, there's doctors, there's the whole realm of support available, and it's through an app, it's through the phone, however an employee is comfortable reaching them. And so honestly, we try to keep HR business partners out of the medical piece as much as we can. We'd prefer that they come to my team or directly on to Included Health or a benefits center. But, we do offer training, regularly as well, and how leaves work. And we've added the same definition to bereavement as well, because it's a significant loss. And so, that's kind of how we're trying to tackle that.
Yeah, that's super helpful. Going in a totally different direction, there are many employees who are in a position where they can't work remotely. What are your recommendations for addressing blue collar workers or frontline workers who need to be on site daily and are going through the fertility process? I'd be curious. Rosanne and Dani, we can keep you guys in the hot seat, but if anyone else wants to jump in.
Yeah, no, that's fine. At MasterCard, we don't necessarily have a large population that can't work remotely. But I would say, if we did, I would think you as a company find a way to set up some sort of like a time bank program to allow these people to take that time that they need. These appointments, you're sort of at the beck and call as to when, your body clock needs to have certain, procedures done or, blood work done. And you can't just say, well, I'll push it off to the next day because of my work schedule. But, continuing to have the open dialogue as a company to say, okay, well, we have to figure out how do we help like these, whether it's hourly workers or, workers that can't say, well, I'm just going to work from home today so I can, jet out for an hour or two, get my stuff done. Find a way to give them a bank of time off that is not their vacation time or their sick time.
Brian, over to you.
So I'll have to say that as a provider, if the pandemic has taught us anything, it's that this is normal, right? Like telemedicine is a thing. Our volume, for example, is through the roof because I'm seeing patients from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Now, it's not that I'm seeing them physically in person, but I'm able to do a Zoom with someone at 7 o'clock before they have to go teach a bunch of kids in a school. And so I'll have a kindergarten teacher who will show up to school early, who will do a telemedicine with me at 7 a.m. And then she'll start teaching at 8 a.m. So I have to say that with telemedicine, you're able to integrate fertility treatment into your workflow and your normal workday every day. Second is, we've also learned through telemedicine, there's lots of ways to rely upon partners, right? So as you're looking as an employer, it's important to recognize who are the laboratory partners that are partnered with your health plan. Is that a LabCorp, a Quest, an Enzo, a specialty laboratory, for example, whomever it is? Because many of these laboratory testing companies actually offer mobile phlebotomy. And so you can have them go to your patient's home at 6 o'clock at night and draw their blood. Well, then you can start to get some diagnostics done. And then in terms of for the male partners, well, now it seems like we're finally having a dialogue about the other half of the equation here, which is the guys in the role of sperm function. So now there's lots of at-home tests. There's there's Legacy, there's Daddy, there's all these sperm protection companies, prevention companies, fertilization. Companies who are like literally focusing on the tech of sperm. Well, now at least you can start to do some at-home testing. It might not be diagnostic, it'd be completely qualitative, but it might just start to give you an idea of like, hey, you got sperm or you don't have sperm. So I do have to say, like, if anything we've learned through the pandemic is there's access to at-home testing, both commercial, professional, and consumer level, and your providers are more accessible than ever before.
Right. I love that. So this one's also probably for you, Brian. What does the future of the fertility process look like? What can we look forward to as we head towards 2030 and beyond?
So the future of fertility treatment is people showing up to the doctor sooner, but not showing up to the office as often. It's exactly what we're just talking about, is that instead of you coming to the doctor when you have a problem, it's actually owning this process and understanding your own fertility potential. Instead of this being something whispered, it's having a dialogue, knowing what your reproductive potential could be. And before you have a problem, speaking to a trained professional about that. I also think it's about not wasting your days and wasting your time waiting at a cattle call to have your blood draw done. It's about being an efficient human and a partner and a worker and dealing with fertility as you would deal with any other medical diagnosis, taking it in stride and being well supported.
Love that. I'd love to, this is a neat question about generational differences in the way individual employees sort of how they're responding. Many Gen Z workers are just coming into the workplace. Are you hearing from younger constituents as well about their fertility goals / needs? Maybe Kathleen, I don't know, put you on the spot here and see if you have any sense of generational differences, or we can go to Brian.
Well, I certainly, would love Brian, to weigh in from a professional and medical perspective. I will say what we do see is that just overall is, we're tracking the individuals that are coming to Carrot for that assistance and that guidance from a past to parenthood perspective. We are seeing people waiting till later in life to start that family forming journey. So, the whole component of preservation on the front end and allowing them to focus on their career, really build that successfully. And when they're ready, they've been able to go through the preservation process and have had that emotional support as well as that financial support to do just that and postpone becoming a parent until, they're ready later in life.
So, I'll add to that, which is that I find that my primary job as a physician is to be a professional de-Googler. Right? Like I try to undo the Google searches that people have really led themselves down these dark rabbit holes at 1 o'clock in the morning when they're all alone and by themselves and unsupported. In general, most people think egg freezing's been around for as long as IVF has been, which is 43 years, but egg freezing has only been commercially available in the United States since 2012. When you start telling people that this is a rather new technology, they take pause. The second thing is that when you explain to people this is a new technology that your employer is supporting because they want you to have the best technology that's out there, that's a very empowering statement to someone. So I always make sure that people understand that the opportunity to freeze your eggs is a great one and one that many didn't have before you because it's rather new. In the same regard, I also explain to people that just because you're freezing your eggs today, it doesn't mean that you're going to diminish your fertility for the future. But more importantly, is it doesn't mean you're going to only conceive with IVF. And what I frequently advise people is that you're using your egg freezing opportunity through your provider as the ability to have more children in the future. This is not for kid number 1. This is potentially for kid number 2, 3, or 4. Because again, fertility doctors have only been around for about 45 years, but people have been reproducing for a long time before we had profession. As a result, it is important for people to know that we're there to help them, to guide them, to help them understand the potential for the future, but this is not the only way that they will reproduce.
That's great, thank you. Back to Rosanne and Dani. For corporate HR leaders, how do you educate yourselves on such a complex and sensitive subject? Do larger companies design in-house HR specialists to work with both employees and providers?
Dani, I'll let you go. I feel like I've taken over.
So, I mean, I'm a member of a number of organizations. EHIR is one where they bring innovators to us. I think Carrot has presented to us a number of times as well. Our consultants keep us in the loop on kind of what's changing and what's happening. I would say I could probably do a better job of maybe sharing with my peers outside of benefits. You know, we tend to be a tight-knit group. Don't think to go outside necessarily, but you know, I do rely upon just our external partners, survey results as well. You know, we participate in multiple ones each year to kind of see where we stand. SVEF is an important one that we rely upon, as well as some other benchmarking and things as well. But for me, that's where I primarily get a lot of the information to see where we stand.
Very, very helpful. All right, I think we are going to close it out there. I'm sorry to everyone that we didn't get to every single question. Over to you, Steve.
Thank you, Siobhan, and all of our speakers for such a nuanced and insightful conversation. You were all really candid, and we appreciate that, and I'm sure our audience does too. So thanks again to our sponsor, Carrot, and to all of you for participating today. If you'd like to join us at From Day One for more virtual events, you can head to our website at fromday1.co and check out more of these events coming up. I'll mention 2 of them. Next Tuesday, December 7th, we'll be talking about financial well-being solutions for employees of all income levels, hourly workers, executives, and everyone in between. And then our next monthly virtual conference, which I mentioned earlier, is Wednesday, December 15th. And we'll be talking about the future of work in an era of rapid change. Thanks, everyone. Stay well. Bye for now from Day One.